And we're good to go. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a lovely rainy day from the most boring town in England again. I'm Jonathan Perry, for those who haven't watched any of our live streams, and I've got the pleasure this week of being joined by one of my very, very good friends and somebody who actually it's a bit of an anniversary for us this week. We've been together, working together for 4 years, myself and Simon. So I'd like to introduce everybody online and everybody who's watching this via playback later on today. Simon Lee, who works with me at Instructure in our learning consultancy team. So good morning, Simon. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Jonathan. I'm not too bad. I'm trying to keep up with the brighter colours with a classic canvas T-shirt here. So as John was saying, I've been with Instructure for getting close to 5 years now. So been working with John for a lot of that time, and really excited to be able to work with him and share these things today with you guys on this live stream.
No, it's going to be good for people who've not had the pleasure of working with Simon. Simon is old school canvas. That's why he's wearing the old school T-shirt. He's not gone with the bright pink like I have today to cheer everybody up on a rainy day. But Simon's a little bit of a legend in our region of EMEA, working with. Well, how many customers do you think you've worked with in those 5 years, Simon? We're getting up to a big number, aren't we?
It's getting close to hundreds now, I would say, just in terms of...
I think it's got to be. I think we've got to have gone 500, 600 nearly between us. Probably, yourself with that many, I think. Okay, let's have a little bit of a chat about what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about the art of sharing. We've been talking about how Simon and I, we work on the same team. And a few weeks ago, you will have met Jess Jones, who worked with us when we were looking at video. Now, one of the things that I really enjoy about the team that we work in Instructure is the collaboration that we have and the sharing that we do. Simon, when he's on site with these amazing customers around the world, when he comes back, he's sharing stories with me about the things that he's learned. Jess is doing the same when she's with the customers. We've also got Nicholas, who works with us with a lot of our customers in Scandinavia, and we're getting all these stories from these great educators. And what we thought we'd do today was start talking about how basically educators within institutions can share amongst themselves. So that's the aim for today. And the way that we're going to do this session this morning is we've got a few sort of common questions that we get asked that we're going to go through. And Simon's going to sort of put his spin on that and tell us about the way that he would look at sharing in those circumstances in the most efficient way. So I think, what would be really good, Simon, is if we load up those questions that we've got. I think we've got the slide deck, haven't we? So if we just get that screen sharing.
You should be able to see that. We've got the
there we go.
Excellent. Okay.
So so these are the sort of topics and the sort of things that we get asked a lot. And when I was talking with Simon earlier, sort of around this, we were always saying that teachers are asking how they can share their activities. So this question here, Simon, what would be your sort of take on this? And when you're working with customers sort of worldwide, how do you sort of promote to a teacher how simple this is to do with Canvas?
Well, obviously, a lot of people will be kind of starting out with Canvas, and they'll spend that time initially learning about the kind of the key features of it. And once they get that much more comfortable with things, they'll realize that they don't want to be spending time doing the same things repeatedly. So if you get something that you found works really well and that you can see some success with, then it makes a lot of sense to reuse that. Obviously, you would want to modify it and change it, but institutions, whether they're schools, colleges, or universities, do like to enable as much consistency for their learners as possible, because not only does that mean the teachers can make sure that the students are focusing on actually the activity itself, but it means that they don't have to be kind of navigating around things, trying to figure out what is meant by the resource or the activity. So certainly in universities, especially where they may have kind of programs or areas of study that are going to have a similar format, then it makes a lot of sense to reuse those sorts of things in a kind of repeatable, templated manner, but then modified to make sure that it fits the subject and potentially the level as well.
Yeah, I think actually, you know, what you've said there about that sort of similar format and that sort of consistency there, and this will answer one of the questions actually that's come in on the live comments. Lisa's asked a question about these sessions being available afterwards. Yes, yeah, all the sessions are available on the YouTube channel, Lisa. So last week we did a session with Professor Paul McSweeney and Dr. Dave Otway from University College Cork, and that's available on the YouTube channel now. One of the things that Dave was talking about in that session was a survey they did with their students. And one of the things that came up about that, and we hear this a lot, I think you've heard it, Simon, haven't you? I've heard it a lot, is that students are saying in certain circumstances that they want that consistency in their course. They're not talking about it being exactly the same in every single course. There's got to be the freedom to teach in the way that teachers need to teach. But that consistency is a big thing for sort of the students, you know, that familiarity with the format. So, you know, on those lines, then if I'm in that situation and I've got this assignment, maybe I'm a leader in a department, or I'm, you know, I've created something cool and I've had a conversation with somebody in the elevator, what would be the way that you would sort of share with another teacher, you know, something, if it's a one-off sort of single sort of resource that you've got one teacher that you want to share it with them because you know they're going to use it?
Well, the first thing is something obviously available to the individual user, and that's the direct share tool. So what I'll do is actually go through how you can get a resource from Canvas, or a Canvas course that you might be responsible for, into the hands of somebody else, and they can choose to use it. You're not forcing them to, you're giving them the option to, by sending it to them. So I'm going to go over to my Canvas view, and I'm going to use a course that some people may already be familiar with, because it's one that Jess actually used in the previous session. And I'm also working on this course as an instructor, but let's say I've decided that this kind of starting point, some of these pages or these materials are something that I want to give to somebody else, like let's say Jonathan. And if I've got, for example, one of my pages or an assignment, any of these items can be shared with the individuals across Canvas. And for example, if I go to my list of pages, I've got my home page here, and we have these 3 dots in the top right-hand corner. And just a general tip, if you see those 3 dots, there's always more stuff that you can do when you're looking in Canvas. And in this case, I've got this set of options down here from send to, copy to, and we'll be talking about that later, the commons. But the first thing that I'm going to do is send this item to another person. And as I say, this is just a way of getting it into their hands so that they can take a look at it. And I'm going to choose, let's say, Mr. Jonathan Perry. And I can share that to multiple people at the same time. So let's say we're in the staff room and I'm talking about something that I've built within my course, and a few other people are interested in that. So I can send that back also to Beth Jones as well. And I could keep on going to kind of share that out to people and kind of encourage that opportunity for them to kind of save some time as well. Because again, even if somebody's starting out with, let's say, a new course in Canvas, but they're not so familiar with how somebody might be building certain types of quizzes or assignments, then you can give somebody a leg up by giving them that sort of a resource where they found it working very well.
Because I imagine that could be really useful as well. You know, what you've been talking there about sort of templates and formats and things, or, you know, a lot of the sort of schools that, you know, I've been talking to recently with the current situation is basically around, you know, there's that ability for things like assessments. You know, we were talking last week about sort of the assessment process at UCC, but what we could do there is we could send like an assessment to multiple teachers to put into their courses to assess their students when they need to do that. You know, so that's sort of a really nice idea. So it'd be useful then if I'm sort of the teacher, you've sent something to me. I've obviously not got my screen loaded up, for showing this. But how would I get that then into my course? Is going to be the question, because if we're sharing this with a new teacher, they're going to be new to Canvas as well. So how easy is that to get that into their course that they want to use?
Well, the other courses that I've got on my account, so I've got one that I'm going to be using for today. I've got my introduction, I've got some sandbox resources, but anything that I want to receive, if I go to my account, I've got my shared content. Now, this is a little bit of this one we prepared earlier, but I've got my...
We've gone a bit Blue Peter. That's all right. I said you were old school. Although Blue Peter is still on, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. No badges for me, though. No. So any received content that other people have sent through to me will be listed here. So, for example, the admin, which may or may not be my alias, has sent me through some items, and we can see that Jess and Nicholas as well have also shared these items. So when I've got something like that, I might want to preview it and take a look at what that example might look like. So if I'm happy with that, I like the look of that, I think, okay, that's something I want to include in my course, I can then import it. And this is something that I could be bringing into, as I say, all of the courses that I have access to. And obviously I'm a busy teacher, so I've got quite a list down here. But let's say my Canvas introduction, and if I've already got some structure inside of that course, I can add it specifically to a module. And this is, as it notes here, is entirely optional. So you might want to just have something that you're going to then maybe modify or tweak before you bring it into the module. Okay.
Yeah, because we promote the use of modules in terms of that structure, for ease of navigation for students. But, I'm aware of in some organizations that I work with, some of the business schools, they're not using a module structure. They're using more of a sort of a page structure and things along those lines. So what you're saying there is you don't have to put that into a specific module. It could just go into your pages option if you wanted to.
Exactly. And I was going to say any items that you're sharing that are native Canvas content, whether it's a quiz or an assignment, a discussion, or a page, all of those will be brought into the course and then, as I say, are optional for you to use. So once we've imported that, it takes a moment for it to kind of transfer across, but the items that will be embedded into that will be there as well. So those images, for example, that were part of that page will be included in that course. So we'd be able to see that in the sandbox that I'm working in, and we can see that item right there that's just been added.
Yeah.
And going into the details of it.
Oh, so you've got that as the template there.
It has, and it's just taking a moment for it. There we go. So there's my images, and obviously inside of an unpublished course, I've got no worries about students seeing this, even if the item is published. But I can then still go in and edit the details of this as I would normally. So just making it nice and kind of flexible, because once you've got something like that inside of a course, there's no reason to kind of to leave it. You can reuse that, because you may want to start with that template. In this case, it's a homepage, so we'd probably only have one of these in a course. But if you're creating, for example, different assignments or different discussions, there's no reason to not reuse something that is going to save you time and, as we've said, prove effective. So we could, at that point, also duplicate items inside of a course. So again, just another useful tip there to remember that you can copy something and reuse it to give you a new version of it.
Yeah.
That you can then work on.
Oh, perfect. Just speed things up and give that consistency across the course. We've actually got on the live comments one of our good Canvas friends, somebody that I haven't seen for a few years, but we've had a few sort of chats on social media about some of the things. But we've got Cal, who's obviously online watching it at the moment. If we transfer sort of and copy the page, do the files come across with that page as well when you're including it within there?
They do. So underneath those images that were part of that or embedded into the page, we'll have them as part of, they've got their own folder and they're all there as well. So again, you've got that sustainability, which if we think longer term, when if you have something that's shared on somebody or is only available on a person's computer or on their drive that they've uploaded, and they don't share it with anyone, making sure that if you copy a course in the future, those files are going to carry across as well. So again, consistency, sustainability.
Yeah, so it's basically making that copy of the file, isn't it, that they're using? Obviously, in different circumstances, if some of the users are using sort of live docs that they're editing with links, but if it's a file that you've uploaded, what we're saying is that's going to copy across. Perfect. Yeah, it's good to see Cal online. Actually, we'll ask him now. We'll see if he'll respond to us. Do you want to do one of these sessions with us one day, Cal? Can we get you online with us to have a conversation? Because I know that I've seen some of the great stuff that Cal's doing on Twitter about their use with Canvas. He's got some, fantastic ideas. If anybody's interested, we'll see if we can get him online in the future. Okay. Well, we're sort of looking at people, and there's a few people sort of commenting in this. The one question we haven't asked today, Simon, which we do ask every week, which I forgot earlier on, is whereabouts in the world are people today? Obviously, we've said that I'm in sunny, well, not so sunny, beautiful Grantham, and we'll see if the people online know any interesting facts about Grantham, seeing as it was the most boring town in 1980. Whereabouts are you based, Simon? And then let's see where everybody else online is based today as well.
I'm actually down in South London near Crystal Palace. So I've been here for a few years now. There's quite a few nice parks around here, but sadly haven't been out into those. Certainly not with the weather down here. It's a bit grim as well. So don't worry, you don't have exclusive rights on it being miserable today, John.
Not got a monopoly on the weather. Okay, cool. Cool. We're going to get Cal on one of the sessions with us. I'll reach out to Cal afterwards and send him an email and see if we can get something sorted. That would be fantastic. Okay, let's there is another question that we sort of alluded to earlier and had a look at. When you were on the resource that you were sharing, there was a send to and there was a copy to. Do you want to quickly just sort of highlight and emphasize what the difference between those two options are? Because I think, we're talking about sharing between teachers, but there's other methods of sharing as well.
Exactly. And this is, well, similar to that duplicate option. We had that ability to copy something inside of a course, and we can do that for ourselves as well. We can copy to another course that we have kind of access to and responsibility to. So again, similar in that we go through our options here, and again, we can include this.
Perfect.
And choosing where to go as well. So again, it's sharing it with yourself and with the audience of that other course as well, potentially.
I can think of that actually. I think back to my teaching career, and one of the things that we used to do, I taught in secondary school, you'd have sets or different ability groups in certain circumstances, or just because of the timetabling, it meant that the students were split into groups. So you're teaching sort of the similar, pretty much the same topics to two groups of students. Now I could see that being really useful, because sometimes I'd trial things like a new experiment with or a new activity with one group of students, and then you'd say, actually that worked really well, I'll do it with another group. And so you could copy that across into that other course. So I can see that being really, really useful in those circumstances, once you've tried something out and you've had a look at that. So that's great. So we've got Portrush. We've got to do a shout out for Whitley Bay as well. So we've got a few people from around the world at the moment. Okay, let's take a look at sort of the other question that we're having, which is a question that I know I get asked a lot about when I'm sort of talking about consultancy with customers. And I work in the sort of the change management, the engagement piece, for instructors. So I'm very much trying to get people collaborating with each other, working together, and sort of having some sort of structure around that. I'm also aware as well that people like to gather sort of resources and things from people all over the world. So can you take us through sort of, the tools that Canvas has got to enable that sort of sharing in those circumstances?
Sure. Well, the main one that we like to kind of emphasize today is the use of things like the Canvas Commons. There are some other options available as well that again, we don't have time to do everything, but things like, for example, blueprints and imports and exports of courses. There's a host of different ways that potentially administrators could be using that to kind of reuse material and give somebody a starting point, rather than those individual items that we've looked at, which can be obviously quite tailored and specific. If we want to standardize something, we've got the Canvas Commons available though, and that's a way of bringing something, I'd say, more to the masses within Canvas. So this idea of a kind of a shared digital filing cabinet, this is something where people can go and elect or choose to bring something into their course. Obviously, if you have that one-to-one conversation with somebody, you go, oh, that sounds great, I'd really like to use it. They can ping that over to you using the direct share. But if you wanted to create something more like a repository, then...
I'll just stop you there 1 second, Simon. We've got one question about the direct share and the copy to, actually. And I think we should answer this now, seeing as you've just mentioned it. So Lorna, who's in Portrush, has asked us, do you need admin privileges to send to or copy to? So do you want to take that one, or shall I take that one?
Yeah, sure. Well, the only thing that would need to be enabled is the feature option itself, and that's something administrators would turn on. But once it's been enabled, it's available to every teacher. Anyone responsible for a course will have that ability to share it with others.
Perfect. Cool. All right, we'll go that. Sorry, I probably knocked your train of thought there. Let's go back to Commons and talking about sharing with the masses or within our sort of organization with a group of people.
Yeah, and the Commons is it's something that's potentially kind of worldwide and public, and you have hundreds of thousands of resources on it that instructors and designers have shared across essentially the community of Canvas users. But that doesn't need to be the case automatically. If you wanted something to be relatively private, either again to yourself, you could have it staying in the Canvas Commons, and you could pull that down into your own courses, similar to the direct share or to the copy options, but you know that you've got it there, and you could potentially publicize it, or you could share a resource into potentially a group of institution members, so people within your department, maybe other people teaching similar subjects to yourself. Or you could have something, and again, this may be more for administrators, but you could be sharing a template or some examples that are available to everyone across the institution that they can then choose to bring down.
Okay, so how does that work then? Let's have give us a bit of a play and
sure,
and show people how cool this is, because I do like Commons. I think it's something that from my perspective. If people are rolling out Canvas sort of early on, or if people have been using it for a while and they've got some resources and things like that, I think this is a really a great tool for sort of departments to work together around, schools to work together, and I love the fact that people can share things across the world, but I'm sort of seeing that, sort of in the science department, we've all sort of creating various resources for a new exam that's coming out, or the curriculum change, and we're all responsible for prepping things, and then we're able to share. So this is a cool tool. I do like it.
So, well, as I was saying, we've got 115,000 pieces of material available in the Commons, and as I say, these have come from educators and designers all over the Canvas community. So if you have the Commons in your navigation bar, you can basically browse this open filing cabinet or digital filing cabinet, which is then also organized by the way that people have shared these items. So we have obviously a lot of material here that we could then filter. We could look at different courses, so we can have an entire course, maybe a template. We could bring down specific modules, assignments. All of these materials would be selectable. But what I think would kind of help us for today's session is actually to almost look at it from the other side of things in terms of how we might share something. So if we do have a resource, let's say in our existing course, that item that I might want to share, if I wanted to bring this, as I say, to other people's view of things, we could take it from, let's say, one of our pages. And of all of the items in here, I might want to make something available. So if I've got my, let's say this welcome page, I can share to Commons, and you'll see share to Commons across most of Canvas in terms of things like the assignments, discussions, even files. All of those individual items can be shared. So when we go into the share option, we've got quite a few, again, levels that we could make this available. And there is, should say as well, administrators do have the ability to control this. You don't automatically have to be, as I say, sharing things to public levels at any Canvas Commons user. But as I mentioned, you've got that first option here where you can share it just to yourself. Again, it's a way of getting things from one course to another if you, for example, didn't have access to direct share. But you can also then go up a further level to the all of EMEA Uni. Now, that's the environment we're using today, EMEA University. And that means that any instructor, any administrator accessing the Canvas Commons would be able to see this. It won't be visible outside of that institution. So again, it's a way of getting something out to people without it going, as I say, kind of beyond your walls, if you wanted to keep it local in that way. The other options here include things like groups, and these are something that administrators can set up to kind of promote that collaboration, that sharing that we've talked about. If you wanted to get something, make it available to, let's say, all of your instructional designers, or maybe within a department, you could create a group which then has members within the Commons. So your instructors could be members of multiple groups, and it means that they would be able to see that and select from those areas.
So what we're saying there with the groups then is that we can have that structure for your department that can be set up, or like you're saying there, Canvas trainers, if you've got Canvas champions and things across the whole organization, you can have whatever structure you want there for grouping people together to make things easier to find. That's the point we're making there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So you could have a kind of a lead professor, designer within each department who's going to be responsible for bringing those sorts of things into their departments, creating their own templates that they could use this Commons resource as a starting point. So it's consistent across the institution, but then tailored to the needs of their specific department. Cool. And the other, before we kind of go global with the public option where anyone would be able to access it, we have the ability to create consortiums, and these are collaborations between different institutions. So is
it a consortium or a consortium?
Consortium.
That's the question.
I'm not sure. I kind of go with consortium because it sounds like it. We'll have to put that one to the public chat, to be fair. May depend on region.
Yeah, they're just going to spell it out for us, though. We'll still be none the wiser. Okay. Yeah.
But those collaborations or institutions working together in a consortium would be able to have things, for example, within region. And this requires you, again, to have essentially an administrator set up that connection. You can't just link up with another university and suddenly have access to their material. They have to accept that invitation and accept that kind of link that you would have. And again, all of these items that you're sharing into the Commons are optional for people. It's that way of browsing a repository. So if you
I'm just thinking what you've said there about where you're sharing and that they've got to authorize it. It's still not going to give them the access to everything that you're sharing from your organization. It's just what you've shared within that consortium, whatever we're calling it.
Exactly. We should confirm these things. But that's key, because you are not, as I say, opening those doors. And obviously, if you wanted to share lots of materials into that consortium, then it's absolutely fine to. They will still only be able to see the individual items that you've chosen to put there. So if I wanted to, again, you can mix and match. You could have something going from your groups to all of the university and combine it and tweak it as need be. Obviously, you'd want to be sensitive to the fact that, something for one department may not work for another, so it may not be appropriate to send it. But again, all of this is optional, but it's a really good way for people to bring materials down into their courses.
Yeah, and I think it just makes that finding it easier, doesn't it? It's just organization of where things are, just makes life so much easier for people.
Exactly. And that last option, as I say, the public, means that we can actually get that out into to any Canvas Commons user all over the world. So we'll also go through just quickly the couple of these other options, including things like the institution approved content. Now, again, this is something that you'd want. It inherently involves administration and indeed authorization, because if you've got something that's particularly timely, maybe something that you want to promote because you know that let's say you're going into assessment season, which I'm sure plenty of people are very aware of at the moment. If you've got something that's going to help people at a particular time, or you know that you've got new users starting, you might want to feature or approve something. If you approve it, it's basically a way of highlighting it as something that you are wanting to promote effectively. And administrators could make sure that it's got that extra flag there, with the coloring in a logo potentially.
One of the questions that's coming in is sort of around these sort of admin things, and it just links back to what you were talking about with the consortiums. Eric has asked the question about where do I find this to choose the consortium as an admin? So, those consortiums that have been created, that would be from the admin toolbar at the top, and there's the option to add and create them as an admin under that menu heading at the top of the screen, isn't there?
That's right. And although I don't have the full admin use in this particular view of it, but yes, you would be able to initiate the consortium. You can create as many of those as you like, but you still would then be searching for the other institution, and and your kind of the admin over there would still need to accept that invitation in order for you guys to link up.
Yeah, so you're in this as a teacher at the moment, so you've not got that admin in the top menu on the screen there, whereas an admin for Commons would have an extra menu item at the top to do that.
Yeah. So cool. The relatively new addition, as it's flagged here as well, is that you can set up things like essentially some more metadata. And we're going to sound a little bit geeky about this, but we've been talking about making sure things are easy to find and kind of making it meaningful when somebody's searching for something. So categorizing it as, for example, a template just means that people know that's exactly what it is, rather than it being, in this case, something like an open textbook where it might just be a resource that students could be working from. The licensing option, again, something that you've got some further information on here, because you may want to tag it accordingly to make sure that it's kind of reflected if you wanted to keep that recognition there. But again, remember, you are sharing this publicly, and once it's out there, people would be able to download it and obviously use it for their own purposes. So you just need to make sure that they're kind of abiding by those terms. The additional information you can also add in here, if you wanted to include that around the licensing, can be mentioned there. But we get down, as I say, to that metadata, and I wouldn't want people to be kind of scared of what that sounds like, because it's actually just a very simple way of making sure something's easy to find and usable. So the first option here is we can put a let's say welcome Canvas homepage, and I'd want to put my description in here. So
I think this is key, isn't it? I wrote a blog post a few months ago, which was about maintaining the connection of the staff room. There was a few blogs that we put up online about sort of maintaining the connection of the classroom with the COVID-19 situation. And one of the things that I was writing about that, and it's something that comes up a lot, is although this takes a little bit of time, what you're doing here to begin with, this saves so much time later on in finding finding things, doesn't it? Just being able to search through this sort of the descriptions and these tags that you're talking about, I think that's key. And I think maybe schools and teachers, if they are talking about this sort of stuff, some sort of system for tagging is really useful. And I think where you're going there with the description and the tags, I think the other thing that's really sort of important is obviously we're global, aren't we? We work with so many different education systems that, you know, we can often click things and say this is grade 1, but in some countries it's not called grade 1. So, you know, tags for things like age group or something along those lines. And the other side of that, I think, from a teacher perspective as well, is, you know, if we're talking about, you know, students within a class, you know, it might be grade 1, but some students do progress quicker than others, and some do progress, you know, slower with others with the materials. So, you know, having sort of an age range in a tag, you know, this is for 5 to 7-year-olds or something, you know, could be a nice idea, you know, for finding those resources that way. But, you know, tagging is just, you know, people sort of forget about it and think it's not key. This, I think, is huge.
Yeah, and that's the again, if you came about it from the end user's perspective, your kind of instructors, your designers, if you're wanting to find something, then you're going to have to be able to put something in that Canvas can search for. So including those sorts of references, as saying about like levels, difficulty, content, all of those tags will make it easier for the Commons to return the results that you want. So we're thinking about others here and making sure that they can get to those as well. So we've got that ability to then include our own image, or we can search for something from Unsplash if we wanted to, again, just have that kind of
I like that one.
Point.
Go with the paint running down the wall.
I say that looks a bit like, I think we've got a logo like that in our head office, actually, with the Canvas logo like that. But obviously you can include your own there if you prefer to.
Cool.
So I'll keep this item, as I say, I wouldn't want this one going too far, just because it's a quick example. So I'll share that now to the Commons. And once that's finished processing, it will just take again a moment. It would be available to my other users. I can also do things like favorite and kind of import and download items if I needed to. So again, I've got quite a lot of ways of bringing those sorts of things into my courses if I need to. And again, these are effectively optional, because you're not pushing this material out to other people. They're going to be able to browse this, again, thinking about that ability to search for things. You'd be able to kind of review that, or, as I say, filter using those tags that we just looked at, and including those approved resources that we mentioned before. We've got that filter there as well.
I think that's perfect. That's cool. It's basically, we're not pushing this out to people. It's somewhere they can go and pull those materials when we need to. Just while you're on that screen, I know that Erica's asked again about the admin sort of menu for the consortiums. Can you click on it? You know, can we just take a quick look at that, where that is on the admin menu? Have you got the right user in for this as well?
I haven't got, this is so it's a limited admin view of it at the moment. So I've only got the view of some of the groups that I can manage. So as a kind of a member of the course designers group and the faculty team, or Faculty of Art Design, which we've used for some examples, I can manage and view a couple of these items. So I can add other users to it, but I don't have the full admin view of things here.
Right. Okay. I'm just thinking to answer Erica's question. It may be that Erica's locked down in terms of the in maybe the admin rights, but somebody with a full root account admin has the ability to set the preferences for Commons, basically with that admin menu at the top, and they would be the people that would have an option that says add basically a consortium, and they can type in the name of another school and connect them together. So it's something for people to be aware. You can have different admin rights within Commons like you can within Canvas, but basically it would be under that admin menu if somebody's got permissions to do that. Yeah. Erica's found it. She says thanks. Cool. glad we could help, Erica. Okay, conscious of the time, Simon, and with this, Commons is brilliant. I love that ability to share things. The other question that we had then was basically, you know, and this is linking back to what Dr. Dave Otway was talking about last week. You know, UCC went into their assignment. I think it was 50,000 assignments that they switched over to Canvas due to the situation. You know, fantastic work. If anybody's not watched last week's live stream. I'd recommend that. Great people at University College Cork. Absolutely love working with them. But what Dave was talking about was the fact that within like the science department, and he teaches chemistry, their students wanted basically revision materials, but they also wanted to do the assessments. And because it was remote, they wanted to sort of lock it down a bit where there was less cheating and randomize things for the quiz questions. And what I thought we could do for this question is just show people that how we can actually collaborate together and create questions to build up a pool of resources and share at the same time. So can you take us through how you would sort of do that with the new quizzing tool, Simon?
Certainly. So yeah, we want to make sure that things are accessible to the people who can be not just using them, but also kind of collaborative designers. And we've got a course here that I'm going to be again kind of starting out with, which is just shared Canvas training resources. And the only item I have in here at the moment is a knowledge check or a quiz. And this is using, as we said, the new quizzes tool. And by going into this, we can see I've got the starting point of some of an assessment or a test that I might be asking my students. And I could go through the normal route of building individual questions one by one. Now that's great if you've got something that's very specific, but we're talking about question banks as well and that randomization. So you don't want students coming in and seeing exactly the same questions. And the ways that you can actually manage that, if we bring something in from a question bank, we have a little piggy bank icon up at the top here.
It's cute. I like that.
And you can see that the banks that I've got access to, and these come from a number of my other courses potentially as well, but I've got my Canvas Essentials here. And this question bank is one that's, again, been prepared earlier with some individual items already. So I could choose to bring these in. But again, if we want to have something more like a random selection, then we've got that add all or random. And so if we think about our, as I say, that kind of revision activity, you may want to create multiple banks with different topics, different kind of levels. And again, I've indicated here when I built this bank, there's going to be a variety of question types, but you could make a bank for specific formats. So things like MCQs or multiple choice, maybe if you want to be using hotspot questions specifically for images. So adding that creates the grouping of questions, and we can see here that it says all questions will be pulled from the bank with 1 point per question. Now, I don't want every single question to be used here. I want to have that element of randomization. So I'd edit this and then be able to check randomly selected questions. And obviously with a pool of questions in potentially, well, talking about Cork a moment ago, they may have hundreds of questions in those sorts of repositories. We work with lots of institutions who have very large scale quizzing. And so they'd be able to select how many they want from this particular bank and set the value of each question as well. And this means that you've got that when a student comes into this quiz, they don't know what they're going to get. They could come into this quiz 3 or 4 different times and they'll get 3 or 4 different sets of questions, all pulled from that same bank.
So I think one of the things then that's really important then with these item banks with that is you probably don't want to just have a science item bank, do you? You want to have, maybe science, however you're going to organize it, I don't know. Let's say balancing chemical equations. Let's keep it as a simple topic. And we could have that as an item bank for 2-mark questions. And then we could have another one, which is basically chemistry essays. And basically they're like 20-mark questions, because what we don't want to do is pull sort of 10, 20-mark essays for one student, whereas another one gets 3 multiple choice questions. So the organization of that's quite important as well, isn't it, I think?
Exactly. And so if you, for example, wanted to select from, let's say, another bank, we've got some biology ones here as well. We'd be able to, again, bring in all of them or just include a couple of individuals. Yeah. And that randomization doesn't mean that you have to have multiple questions coming in. You may only just want to have one particular essay question, as you were saying, to build out your quiz. And so if you know that you've got a bank exclusively of essay questions or short answer in this case, we could just randomly select a single question. So again, makes it nice and easy to have a bit of variety, a bit of that random element for maybe a grouping or category of questions. So if there's a particular area that you want to put a lot of, you really want to test your students on in detail. So let's say maybe about, well, we've got one for Canvas Essentials here. So we want to make sure that they've got the absolute, the key things that people need to know about. But we could then have a single essay question. Maybe we want people to be thinking about how they're using formative feedback, or another essay question about, what type of testing or quizzing tools are you using in your course? And those are potentially longer form, but you can have a random selection in there as well.
So how would I go about sharing that item bank then? So say I'm wanting to put some questions in, or I've put a few in, but I want you to be able to work on it as well with me and add your questions in there, because we're going to create some assessments which cover aspects of your teaching and aspects of my teaching. How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, the item banks that we can also manage are available up here. Now, this is slightly different from using them in this quiz, because we're actually going to be updating the details of it. And you'll notice that we've got that sharing option for each one. But inside of this is where I could be managing my questions. And if I wanted to give somebody else access to this, I'll give you that option in a moment, John. But I just also want to highlight something else that we've been talking about, is the ability to put data and tags in items as well. So if we're creating a new question, for example, let's say, keep it nice and simple, we'll have a true, false. We've got tags and metadata down here as well. So we could be building out our question, and again, won't focus on that, but including that sort of extra information means that if you're searching your banks, you can find things nice and easily. So again, a good way to keep things sustainable.
Because on the searching for that, you've got those filters there. So what sort of filters do you get when you're looking on the quizzes?
Mm-hmm. So I can, depending on what's inside of it, basically, so it's responsive. If I don't have a certain type of question, it won't be listed here, but I can see that I've got 2 hotspots, 1 true or false, 1 fill in the blank. And this is a good way to also think about managing, and you consider, well, I want a degree of variety in here, but I realize I've only got 1 categorization question, I've only got 1 fill in the blank. Maybe I want to have lots of multiple choice questions in here, in which case I can use this as a way of kind of tracking them down, editing them, copying them, moving them from one item bank to another as well. So we can take this and send this somewhere else if we needed to as well. So again, a lot more.
And those filters are available obviously when you're searching in the quiz as well, aren't they? So you get that option to do
exactly.
that.
The actual bank itself, or the items that I want to, if I wanted to give somebody else the option to manage this, if I share this, we've got that same option. So I'm going to send this one over to Jess, and she'll be able to
actually put a comment in on YouTube. She's actually watching us. She didn't want to feel left out today. Good morning, Jess.
Good morning. Well, I'll be expecting a few more questions in here from you shortly then. But when I've added that, my options now, click the add button as well. That's my fault more than anything going on there. So I can manage who's got access to that now that Jess does have it. When I click done, we can see that that's now shared with multiple people, myself and others, and everyone would be able to contribute to that bank using the tools that we've kind of gone through already.
So I suppose best practice there that we could look at is, if you are looking to collaborate, is to share the item banks early on, so that you've got the boxes ready to put things into, rather than people creating item banks and then trying to merge them together later. You can create an empty box, share it with other people, and then we can come together and work and put things into that item bank together. Would be the approach that we're saying there.
Exactly. It's the same as the modules and the things that we consider for our students, where we want to have some structure for them to be able to follow. So having that structure here as well is going to benefit everyone.
Okay, that's perfect. No, thanks for that, Simon. I I'm conscious of the time, and we do like to give people in these sessions the opportunity to ask some questions at the end as well. We've got a lot of people from all over with us this morning. Professor Abel Kinoti from Nairobi in Kenya, beautiful country. I spent my honeymoon in Kenya, absolutely loved it, and I love Nairobi as well. Really interesting natural history museum there. So if you're into sort of evolution topics and sort of humanoid fossils, fantastic museum in Kenya that if anybody just fancies, well, once we can travel, if anybody fancies a day trip, might be a bit far to travel, but I love Kenya. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll think whether or not there's any more questions really to come up. There's a question that I'm thinking of that's come into my head that we can maybe show if people haven't got any questions for us. But for the people online, because obviously we can't answer you, sort of go back and forth in time. If you're watching this in the video, to be able to answer your question, then that'd just be sort of really, really cool physics if we could do that. But if anybody online's got any questions for us that they'd still like us to answer, if not, I'm going to ask Simon a question about video, seeing as Jess is online and she spoke about video a few weeks ago.
All right. Well, should we give people a moment, or do you want to?
We'll go with my question, and then we'll see if anything pops up, just to, so people can add this. Jess was talking about video placement and things along those lines last time, and we were talking about putting videos in the rich content editor. We were talking about using Studio. Now, I suppose it's one of the questions that people will come up. We've talked about sharing pages. We've talked about sort of sharing assignments and item banks. But let's say I've recorded some videos, which is time consuming to record them. We don't want everybody creating their own videos all the time. Or I've got some really useful videos that are going to be relevant to other people in my department. How can I share if I have got Studio? If this is an additional product that plugs into Canvas that we have. How easy is it to share videos there with the new release that I know came out last week?
Well, like a lot of items in Canvas, sharing is very simple with the videos in Studio as well. For individual items, you may want to share media with an individual. Now, that's perfectly fine. You can send that over to them. They can manage it as well. But the newer feature that John's alluding to is the option to create collections. And this is a way of kind of filing and sorting items so that you can gather together different resources. Once you've got a collection, that's similar to an item bank in new quizzes. So we might have one for, let's say, your design examples. Then I'd be able to either add videos directly from here, or if I've already got items, I can then move them into that collection. And that collection is now shareable as well. So if I wanted to then send that over to another person, let's say again, Jess is going to be on the receiving end of a few things today. And I've got the choice there where I can not just allow people to view items, but edit. So we've got a little bit more granularity here in terms of their responsibilities. So we can just have people use that resource in their teaching, or we can have them contribute and manage the content of that collection as well. So I'm going to say I do trust Jess with the videos that I'd be adding here. And I'd also want her to be able to contribute as well, because I know she'd have obviously a lot of great examples to include. So adding that, I can also go back and change that if I've decided against it, but I'd be able to update that collection, which again will show in Jess's studio items as well. So those that are shared with another person. So if anyone's shared things with me, I'd be able to see those as well.
Perfect. Nice. So that's the new one that's been out quite recently for people who are using Studio within their Canvas system. I am conscious of the time, Simon. I'd love to talk to you all day. Generally, we do anyway, don't we? It's the way we work.
You can't really shut us up, to be fair.
No. I think Jess, who's online, can confirm that as well. I don't think there's any more questions coming in from the community that we've got watching us today. So I think we'll draw things to an end. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be running another one of these sessions next week. So keep an eye out. We'll get the details out for who we're going to have online and the topic that we're going to be discussing within the next few days. Great fun again. Love doing it. For anybody else online, if you've got topics and things that you would like us to talk about, the questions and things like that, you know, just you can put things into the comments on this, and we can have a look and see if there's other things that, you know, really topical that people would like to talk about. But I want to thank Simon for your time this morning. It's been a pleasure, sir. I didn't manage to get my coffee and my croissants today, which is a little bit frustrating.
Did succeed on the coffee front, I will admit, but yeah, still no croissants here either. But no, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. May see people again in the future.
No, it's been great. So I think this is where we go old school again, and we do the goodbye from him and goodbye from me, whatever that joke was, whichever TV program it was that we had. But thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you all. Cheers.